So Ecamm have updated to version 4.4 and I want to explain what's new. As ever with these updates, there are some big changes and a lot of smaller ones or more specific ones that will be huge for some people, but the average user probably will never use them. So I'm going to be focusing in this video on the major updates that I think you're going to be most excited about, and then I'll list out the others in the description below. So let's break this down into three main areas. First, I want to start with some updates to the Zoom integration. If you don't know anything about the Zoom integration that Ecamm brought in last year, please head over after this and watch my version 4.3 update video because it was huge. So first, we're going to have a look at the active speaker update. I'm sure you've seen this feature in Zoom that spotlights whoever is speaking, and in the previous version of Ecamm, you could already create a placeholder in a scene for the active speaker, but you had to bring that person into Ecamm first. So you can see on my window here, this is on my Zoom tab in Ecamm, and so far I've got Owen and Rachel that are sitting there waiting, and I would have had to click add up here and then assign. I would have had to add them in here, not assign them to a placeholder. They're active speakers, but in order for them to become an active speaker, it was only selecting from the maximum of 8 people that I could put into here. Well, not anymore. With the new update, we can create a placeholder in a scene for the active speaker in Zoom, and without anybody needing to be pulled into that Zoom window there, they can now be pulled into that active speaker. This is such a great update that's going to make it so much easier for us hosting meetings. We're going to have a little demo. Now, as you can see, Owen and Rachel are sitting in my Zoom meeting, and both of them have got cameras off and muted, so hopefully you can hear me. Do you want to just unmute and put your cameras on? Or maybe just put your cameras on and stay muted for a minute. Hey there, thank you for joining me. Rachel hates doing this, so she's going to be... I shall pay for this later. Now, you can see that they are in Zoom, so this is Zoom, and remember that because we're going through Ecamm, I don't actually have the Zoom app open. This is all happening inside of Ecamm, but I haven't actually had to bring them up into this area here, but I'm going to kind of test this first of all, and you'll see I'm kind of breaking it. I want you to see how it won't work before you show you how to do it, because otherwise you're all going to come back and go, that didn't work for me. So at the moment, if Owen were to just unmute a second, Owen. Hey, Owen,
Hello.
how you doing? Good to see you. Now, Owen, you're talking to me, but my active speaker hasn't actually picked you up in Ecamm. And I can see people are getting tripped up at this. The reason is, and there's a bit of a clue down here in the sound levels as well, it says Zoom guests not capturing. And so I need to fix this. And if I come up here to my Zoom tab, under these 3 dots, it says start capturing audio and video.
Recording in progress.
This message has now just gone to these guys saying that the recording is in progress. I hear it as well. And as soon as I've done that, notice that this is now visible down here, the Zoom guests, and Owen has suddenly appeared because he was the last person to speak that Zoom heard. So Owen, you're now in as my active speaker. If Rachel were to unmute and just say hello.
Hello.
It's now just jumped across, and Rachel is my active speaker. So it's as easy as that. I haven't had to pull them in. I just start the meeting. But as you saw, I do need to say start capturing audio and video, and then it will hear between them. So Owen, if you just say something, my hands are off the controls here.
Hello. Will this switch it back?
It absolutely will. So can you see how useful this would be in a Zoom meeting? And typically in a Zoom meeting, certainly for me, I would mute everybody when they arrive, and I take control of that. Certainly if it's a bigger meeting, I would have a moderator in, and I would be saying, right, and it's usually Owen that's doing this for me, I would be saying when somebody raises their hand, can you unmute them? And as soon as they start speaking, Ecamm would pick them up and bring them in here. So it would allow me to nicely go from me talking up here to say, right, let's bring some guests on and have a talk. You know, we're in a Q&A session, and yeah, it would automatically jump to the person who speaks last. Now, what Ecamm have done with this, because when this first came out, if people were speaking at once or somebody would have cough or something like that, it would jump across for a second, and maybe like me, you saw some really awkward recordings on Zoom during lockdown where people would suddenly cough or make a noise and the camera would jump to them. This won't happen. Ecamm have built a clutch, I think they call it, in here. So if Rachel were to cough down there... oh, it did. That was a big cough. The idea is if Owen were talking, so Owen, just talk to me for a second. But
yeah, so we'll test then if coughing while talking switches it over, and whether...
Come on, mates, let's all get involved. Do a little cough down there.
So will that change over?
Right.
Okay.
So there's a sensitivity level that seems to have just been adjusted or taken. I'm trying to say the right way to say it. The sensitivity's been lowered there, so it's not going to hear that one sudden sound from somebody, but it will pick them up. I think what happened first time there, because Owen didn't carry on talking, it still went, oh, that was the last sound, we'll jump to that one. So this is a really good fix and an update. This is the kind of stuff we deal with in beta, so that by the time it gets to this release, things like that, people will have given feedback and said what went wrong on their meetings. And so I really like this. And this active speaker, I would encourage you, if you're used to doing meetings like this, turn this active speaker on. It's a really good feature, and it will allow you just to bring people in and just be used to asking people to make sure they mute themselves when they're not on camera like this, because it can get awkward otherwise. So thank you guys. Do you mind just staying on? You can turn your cameras back and unmute if you like. I'm just going to come back to this scene here. I might want you in a second. So thank you. Now, within the Zoom settings, and if I come down here to my preferences, and this is Zoom, I have an option in here, first of all, to turn on this Zoom active camera. So if you're finding you're not seeing that option for an active camera, make sure it's visible there. And I've turned off, so I've unticked show me as an active speaker. What that means is that when I'm talking otherwise, I'm going to appear alongside myself as the active speaker. And a step on from that this time around with this update is anybody else that is on the screen with me. So if I've got a co-host, maybe Owen and I are running the show together, it also not only doesn't want to pick me up as active camera, but it doesn't want to pick Owen up as the active speaker either. So really clever update that whatever the camera is that is already on screen, it won't get accidentally pulled up as an active speaker. So that's another update that we've got. And next is a feature that I actually asked Ken to include. So I feel like this is mine. And if you like this one, I expect to thank you in the comments. The way that I use Zoom mostly is for my bi-weekly support calls that I do in a couple of my groups. And typically, I like to sit like it is there actually and watch in a gallery view. And, as maybe there's a dozen of us on and I'm sitting looking there, I quite like that rather than spotlighting myself. But occasionally I'll go, right, okay, let me just demonstrate to you. And within Ecamm, I'll go to my screen share, or maybe I'm holding something up and I'm demonstrating and people go, you're just small in my gallery. Can you make yourself big? And that's a feature called spotlighting. It's a real pain. Now, if I show you down here, this is my Zoom meeting, especially because typically that Zoom window I've got up there on my teleprompter. But if in a meeting up till now, I want to say, right, I want to spotlight my video, which means for everybody watching, it forces my window up and then they can just see the others' little thumbnails. I have to come here to these three little dots, and part way down, I go spotlight for everyone. It really doesn't jump out. And I would click that. And as you can see there, it's spotlighted me and it's pushed the other two guys up. And if I want to take that away, I have to click remove spotlight. Well, I was asking Ken for this and I said, is there a way that I could get a Stream Deck button that would allow me to spotlight? And I've got it. So this to me is huge. So if you have a Stream Deck, you can now have a look down the menu that is there of the little icons that you can pull across. And one of them is to spotlight yourself. And let me just check that it works. I should have tested this before. I'm going to press my button to spotlight. And yay, it works. I love that. I press it again and it takes me back. So Ken, thank you so much for that one. It might not be a big deal to people who don't do this, but for me, I want to just jump between spotlighting back to the gallery. I absolutely love that feature. If you love it, let me know in the comments. Now, another one that was added in that is very similar to this is actually down here in the Zoom settings again. Let me just click on this. We can automatically spotlight yourself in a meeting. So as soon as you get 2 or more participants join, so there have to be 3 of you on to be able to spotlight anyway. But as soon as that second participant joins you, it will automatically spotlight. I don't always like this because I want to see who's in the room with me and I want to see people's expressions, and if I'm asking them something, I like to read the room, and I can't do that if I'm spotlighted all the time. But if that's something you want, it's absolutely in here now. We're still on Zoom. This is another nice little feature here. You can have guest names appear as overlays like they would in Zoom, but we're able to brand and customize it a bit. I think this is a really nice touch. Let me just come over again. Owen, if you wouldn't mind turning your camera back on, let's just be able to make sure we've got someone who can pull in. And if I go me and active, oh, Rach is stuck there. There's Owen. When I come over here and I click the pencil, notice it says show guest name. So if I tick that on, here's Owen's name, and I've actually played with this. I can, with the pencil here, I can go in, I can actually change the text. Well, actually we can go into that because it allows me to choose the font, the size, and the background we're adjusting as an overlay, but I can do all kinds of things, change that around and brand it. What you can't do, it is a bit limited in that all I can do is move it left, middle and right, but that's really cool. And honestly, like, we're going to be doing a Ecamm Foundations live in a couple of weeks' time, and I'm going to be bringing people up for Q&A, and I really like this because I don't know everyone's names when we get on a big call, but for me to be able to talk, and maybe it's Owen that I've just brought up and I'm partway through explaining to him, I'm thinking, oh, what was his name? I'm terrible with names. Well, I've got his name right there in front of me, and that will jump around. So, Rach, if you're still there, let's just test this. And so, Rach, we don't even need to speak. There you go. Look, it's automatically changed across to Rachel instead of Owen. So live, it's changing there, putting a nice little placeholder underneath, and you can customize and brand it, as I say, within those 3 positions at the bottom of the window. Thank you guys. Again, appreciate that. Stay with me. I might still need you. Before we leave Zoom, let me just add, if you use the isolated video tracks, ISO video tracks, which means that you can have separate clean recordings for the individual. If I want the recording of me on camera here without this branding, then that isolated track will give me that, and it will for a guest that I brought on. Well, now we can also do that for the active speaker. So there will be a feed that comes through, and you'll get, so if I were recording this now in Ecamm, I would have had the full screen of Rach when she was up talking and the full screen of Owen when they're up. And I reckon this is really cool, actually, because the amount of times I've been on a call and one of my customers praises me and really gives me a testimonial there on the call, and they'll go, yeah, well, this is why I joined your program and I found it really, and I think, oh, I wish I was capturing this. You know, maybe they're just sitting there in the gallery. Well, now they will, and that active speaker, if I'm recording it, will give me that clean clip of whoever was speaking, and it'll just run in the background for that active speaker track. So again, a really cool little feature. Now, there are a few more Zoom updates that I'm not going to go into now. Again, I've listed them down in the description below. So let's move on. Now, that's enough of Zoom. If you've got a PTZ camera, a pan-tilt zoom camera, or you want an excuse to buy one, well, Ecamm have built integration right into their dashboard now, which supports the OBSpot cameras, the Insta360, Link, UVC, Visca, and NDI cameras. No, I don't know what those last few are either. Now, I do have the OBSpot Tiny 2 sitting at the side of me. If I change this scene across here, you can see this is the kind of image coming through, and yeah, the beauty of these is, you know, it will do, it'll track us, it'll move around. So people that want to be able to have that following them through. Cool little cameras. Certainly I use one back in my office normally, and I've got on the other side of the room. And if I want to get up and walk around and demonstrate something to a customer or show them how I've got the camera set up and things like that, it's really cool for following me around. Now, this is the cool bit. Notice you can see on my screen here that I've got this little dashboard, and so it's tracking down there. I can lock it in with all the settings instead of having to have the OBSpot app open. But if I turn off the tracking, I can take over now, and it will zoom in like this, and I get the little joystick to be able to move things around. And so what I can do is, let's actually bring this down, and I tend to just tap this a bit, find it a little bit easier to work with. If I think, right, this is actually a position I want it to stay in, I'm going to call this preset 2, and I can save this. And then, come on. I'm terrible at video games, and it's the same kind of coordination. Let's say we want this one to be, there we go. And what I want to do here, we're going to call this preset 1 and save this one. This is what I really like about this. I think this is very powerful. So we've got our camera switcher down here, and I can put on here, I've got camera A, which is my cam link. Camera B, I can call my OBSpot with preset 1. Camera C is my OBSpot with preset 2. So I could create scenes, and I could put placeholders in as camera B, camera C, and this one camera now will jump between different positions. This would be really useful if you were doing an interview and you wanted to actually jump it from one side to the other, then it could do that. So if I were to change this camera around, the easiest way to do it probably is down here in the settings. If I change this now to camera B, it's going to jump to the preset here. If I changed it to camera C, you'll see that it jumps down there to that preset. So yeah, setting up a scene with these placeholders in different positions where you regularly want to be able to go, I think that is really powerful. Or you can just flick it back into the tracking, and it will pick up and it will carry on following you around. So some really nice updates there for those of you that, as I say, have got or fancy buying one of these PTZ cameras. Go have a blast with that one. Now we're on to the third and final area of these updates, and I've kind of left the best till last, I reckon. It's a feature called Live Motion, and it animates changes between overlays. Let me demonstrate. I'll turn this off the screen here. I'll make this a bit bigger. And what I want you to see is, here I am. This is a scene with me. Now remember, this is overlays that it's going to morph or transition between. And if I've got the same overlay in two scenes and I change between them, watch what happens. So on this next one here of me with the active camera, notice that it pushes me off to the side there in this nice little live motion is what it's called. I kind of think morphing. That's really the way I'm talking about this. Back to me, and it does this, and it brings this back. Now, one of the things that I did spot with this, and I'm sure it will get updated, is that when you've got this name on, it doesn't seem to like that. It kind of fades out. It's like it doesn't know what to do with that. So if you're going to be using this a lot, I would probably turn that name off. So I'm going to come up here and turn off Show Guest Name, because I like the way this works otherwise. So me and active, bless, that's not right sitting like that. It's locked on, so that's good actually. It saves them both having to come back on. But maybe I've got them here. Maybe I then want to come across and we're going to do a screen sharing or doing a slide presentation or something. It's kept us both like this, and I just feel this is a really slick way. When I saw this demonstrated, I thought, Yeah, we're changing our scenes around. Now, a bit of a pro tip with this, because as you're seeing there, it's changing the size, it will adjust borders and things, positions, shapes, even opacity with it as well. Let's just go between me and, I'm going to come to this one just with me on without the active camera. So there's me, and then there's me on screen. Now, because this one is the actual screen behind, it's not an overlay, that's not going to do anything, all right? It's only overlays. Now, if I were to come to this one here, when the previous scene doesn't have this overlay, it's got nothing to transition from. So notice that when I came from here and I came back to this screen share one, that overlay just appeared at the side. But what I did here, so although you can only see, or this one here, although you can only see me on the top, we've still got a transition of the active speaker and the screen overlay coming out. And the way I've done that is, although you can only see me on the top here, can you notice that on my cursor there, you can see that there's something else? I've thought ahead when I made this scene, and knowing that potentially I'm going to want an active speaker and a screen share to come in this one, I've also added in the active speaker as an overlay and the screen share as an overlay. But what I've done is to turn their opacity down so you can't see them and push them down underneath my camera here. So it just means that when I go to that next one, it's not going, oh, got nothing to transition here, so I'm just going to plonk it on the screen. It actually still has a bit of a movement there. So there's a bit of a tip for you. I think that's a great way to be able to use this. Now, I would love to see what you came up with this. I know we've got some real creative people. I can't wait to see what the likes of Fulgens does with this, and any of those text overlays and things you can take from one position to another. You know, you could be swinging around a shape and doing cool things in the background, I'm sure. This is really just the obvious ones of cameras and screen shares and overlays like this on the front. But even so, I just find that is so much nicer. And we're just looking here. If I just bring that up here, the way you get to this is under your preferences, under video, default transition is live motion. So if there's no transition, all that's happening is when I go like this, we just plonk on screen. It's what we've all been used to, been totally happy with. But now we can change that transition to this live motion. Yeah, I'm proper loving that. That's a really nice update. Now, as I said, there are a lot of other new features. We could have kept going with this video to try and cover them all, but I kind of feel some of you are going to be disappearing because you don't feel it's relevant to you. So what I've done is I've just listed them down below. There's things like audio filters and general improvements. Everything is down there in a list in the description. Have a look at it. Come back to me in the comments if you've got any questions about some of those other things. We could always make a short video about it. Now, I mentioned at the start that if you missed our version 4.3 update with the Zoom integration, I'll link to that, and so we'll do that, and you can head over and watch that one there. And also, if you've already watched that and you know about that, well, I've linked down here to our full playlist of Ecamm tutorials. You can go and have some fun watching through those. Well, thanks ever so much for your time as ever. Be sure to subscribe, give us a thumbs up if you haven't already, and I'll see you in another video. Thank you.